uh, HDMPLG.
HDMI, or as mom would say, it's an HDMI 11. No, that's
Oh,
HDMI 1 and HDMI 2.
yeah,
She said,
funny.
I put it in the 11. I said, you don't have 11.
Mine goes to 11.
Exactly. All right, let's
Fun.
take a breath.
Okay.
May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. And tonight we are going to start on chapter 2. So we were talking before we logged on about chapter 1 being about substance. Chapter 1 was spiritual substance. Chapter 2 is spiritual mind. So we started with the substance, and now we're going to put the substance through mind. And every single thing has its origin in mind. Mind evolves ideas which express themselves through thoughts and words. An idea is the most important factor in every act because ideas are how we formulate thoughts that move our world. Said in another way, our health, our finances, our serenity, everything about us is derived from the ideas that we pay the most attention to. So, what we're paying attention to plays out in our lives. Fillmore says that we have never had a desire that could not be fulfilled somewhere in the providence of God. And that is the truth because God is all and all is mind. And therefore, the things that appear have to be expressions of mind. So when you think about that, God is all there is. And all there is this mind, this spiritual mind. And so anything that appears has to be an expression of mind. And it comes from the mind of God through our minds, and then it expresses. And let me pause here and say, I cannot give page numbers. Last week, Julianne asked for page numbers, and my book is so different than everybody else's, except mom's and mine are both different, and I don't even think they match. So when I'm looking through and quoting Fillmore, it's a totally different page because I looked at Anne's. So sorry about that. But God's mind or divine mind is an isness. This is where we get into that part of the divine, that part of spirituality that is very, very hard to articulate because we have all these words that mean things to us, but they're also very finite because that is just the nature of language is that we use these words to define things that we see, that we hear, that we taste, that we smell. We use language to communicate what our senses pick up. And of course, the divine is not of the sense world. So this isness just is. And it's not limited to the level of isness because it's all. It's all there is. And it can break from its character into the realm of appearances. So not only is it all there is and it's undefinable and it's untangible, but it also can be tangible. It can break from that isness and manifest into the realm of appearance or the sense world. And mind, as we say every Sunday, is both visible and invisible. And when we're not demonstrating or manifesting as we believe that we should, then what we have to do is to continue our practice, to keep working on it and perfecting our thoughts. Because, as we said earlier, it's all coming through our minds. So when we take these ideas from the divine, from the all that is, it's funneled down and pushed through. And I think I said this in our last class, push through that filter that we have, our belief system, race mind, what's going on around us, and we push and twist and manipulate these ideas. And so when we're not manifesting what we want to manifest, then it's coming through that filter. Then we've got to look at that filter and keep practicing and keep working on it. Fillmore says that we wouldn't cut down a growing crop just because it hasn't fully ripened yet. And so he cautions us to keep from jumping to conclusions as far as demonstration is concerned. So when we think, well, this doesn't work, it's a bunch of bunk. Well, you wouldn't go out into PJ's turnip patch and pull up one of the turnip greens and say, well, there's no turnip on the end of this, let's just pull them all up and throw it. Well, they haven't produced turnips yet, but they're working on it. And we're working on it. So don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Don't jump to conclusions and say, this doesn't work because it hasn't worked immediately. It hasn't worked right now because it's going through your filter. It's going through my filter. Every situation that we come upon has within it an ideal condition because we have the ability to mentally project a perfect outcome. We also have the ability to project an imperfect outcome. The possibilities that our minds can conceive have the prospect of fulfillment in expression. So we might deny things that are in the outer and say, you know, I'm not going, this has no power over me. This situation has no power over me. And we can continue that denial, and it's a good practice. But as long as we are living in contact with those things, we're recognizing them. So if I say this traffic has no power over me, and I think, look at that idiot driver, I'm still in contact with it. I've not released it. I've not gotten into that serene place within myself where it truly has no power over me. And I can continue to say affirmation and denial after affirmation and denial, but until I lose contact with that I no longer want to see, it's there. So when we affirm being, when we affirm the being, when we affirm ourselves as being, but we deny being an expression of that being, so we say, yeah, God is all, but I'm still having trouble here. You know, then Fillmore says that we're a house divided against itself, because if we are acknowledging that the divine is, and we are children of the divine, but at the same time say that we have these problems or we're poor or whatever, then we've just divided ourselves, and that can't stand. It can't hold up. And it works itself out in lack. It works itself out in ill health. It works itself out in frustration and anger, because we're not being who we say we are or who we know ourselves to be. So a lot of us, everyone, I guess, questions why bad things happen and why we don't practice truth better if God is all powerful and wise. So if God is all and that's all there is, then why aren't we better at this? And Fillmore points out that understanding of the law, understanding of spiritual law is an essential part of our am. It's an essential part of our identity. And we have to realize that we are a focal point in God consciousness, and that we are expressions of that consciousness, and not just say it, but live it. We have to understand the processes that bring about our true expression. We have to accumulate in our individual consciousness all of the attributes of infinite mind, of divine mind. When I wrote this, I said that it reminded me of how some of the kids or most of the kids at Youth Villages act. They consistently act in ways that prompt people to treat them poorly, which prompts them to act poorly. So they continue to destroy property, and they debase one another and call each other names and fight with each other. And the people that they're in the care of then have a hard time treating them with love and respect because they don't love and respect themselves. And it's this horrible cycle of behavior. And instead of changing their behavior, changing the way that they act and react, they continue to do this and continue to get these same results, which is exactly what we do. Absolutely. And we're not that bad. We don't beat each other up and we don't tear up other people's things, but we wonder when we see lack, we wonder when we talk about other people, we wonder when we focus on the negative, why this isn't why this, our divinity, why the things that we know spiritual law to be aren't playing out in our lives. And it's the same thing. And it just takes practice. The other day when I was thinking about it, I thought watching Angelo play the piano is a miracle. The man is amazing. And you could call it miraculous, but what it is practice, 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 practice. It was so important to him that he spends his time and his energy crafting himself and learning that and practicing it and doing it. And that's how we have to do this, because it takes more practice to learn this than it does to learn the piano. And it's not that Angelo is a special person and none of the rest of us could do it, but none of us at this table want to. But we would all say that we want to be prosperous. We would all say that we want to be healthy. We would all say that we want to be serene. But it just takes that practice. And that infinite mind with all of its resources is available to us at all times. And what we become and what we use of it is contingent upon the effort that we exert to appropriate the resources that are there. That substance that we talked about last week that we said is everywhere present at all times. And we just have to pull it out of the air. We can only fully express our divinity if we follow the laws of mind. And we can only follow the laws of mind if we practice. That requires understanding. It requires obeying. It requires intelligence. And it requires love. And faith. And using those things, then we will achieve results. Then we'll get what we want. Those are off the top of my head. So understanding, love, faith, and practice, I think, are the four that I said. Oh, obeying. So when you marry male and female, wisdom and love, and that's why it's always male and female. It's not a human male and a human female that have to be married. It's that wisdom. It's the wisdom represented by the male character in the Bible and the love represented by the female character. When you marry those, then you're able to express and create. Then you can bring forth your seed. The yin and the yang. The yin and the yang. It takes love and wisdom to make creations. And we're always taking those ideas out of the spirit realm and forming them into our conceptions of what we desire. Our conceptions of what we desire. So if we have a limited conception of what we want, if it's, I want a new truck and I want this new truck, and then I've limited myself. And so I may be creating that, but I've limited what my creation could be. And sometimes what we create doesn't satisfy us because we've taken the idea away from its parents. And its parents are love and wisdom. And when we do that, then it's raised in this atmosphere of error and ignorance. So if you take a beautiful idea or a beautiful baby away from love and wisdom, and you try to raise it over here and build something out of it in ignorance and error, what do you think you're going to get? We're not going to get what we've projected. We're not going to get what we say we want. And as far as money's concerned, we've taken the idea of prosperity, removed it from love and wisdom, and now it's become this unruly brat. And you can picture one right now, usually in a restaurant. And that's what we've got. It's demanding and it's fickle, and we think that we have to play its tune. So shh, shh, shh. Here, take this device. Take this laptop.
Sure.
Yeah. So we lose the concept of substance and knowing that we can take this substance that's all around us and create, and we've lost that idea, and we may create wealth, but what we get from that is unstable. So yeah, we've got this money, but when's it going to go? When's my, I'm going to have a bigger house. Now I've got to have all this stuff. And what if the stock market crashes? And so there's no stability. There's no serenity there. There's no understanding and strength and the ability to know that we are taken care of. So you see all of these people with money that are unhappy because they're unstable. They've removed that idea from its parents, and it's no longer love and wisdom. Now it's this unruly brat that they have to constantly manage. So in order to have adequate supply at all times, we have to unite with that spirit that knows how to handle those ideas, that knows how to mold that substance, that knows that there is substance, that recognizes that we are living in opulence. When we see limitation, that's our problem, because divine mind knows that substance is unlimited and omnipresent, and it's equally available to everyone all the time, everywhere. So when we see lack, we're seeing wrongly, but that's what we're getting, because that's what we see. What you see is what you get. So in order to manifest our good, we have to find a way to connect to ideas of substance with ideas of natural expression. And we do that through prayer and faith. So we take these ideas, we center ourselves in prayer, we have faith that we are able to create, and then we can create. The line, "Give us this day our daily bread," in the Lord's Prayer should be, "Give us today the substance of tomorrow's bread," because all we need is substance. Because we create from substance. So, and give us this day, the you is understood. You do give us this day our substance. Our substance is there waiting on us. And that's all we need for tomorrow's bread, because that's how we create, is through that substance. We don't need to be handed a loaf of bread. We need to know that divine mind has given us all these ideas. All manifestation begins as substance. And in prayer, we get those ideas together. We gather them together, and we know that God is unlimited substance, and God is our supply and our support. And we remind ourselves of that when we're in the silence, when we're in meditation, when we're in prayer, because what that is a time of reflection, a time to say, yes, I am provided for, and I have everything that I need. We're never going to receive material things from God because God doesn't give you a truck or give you bread. But the substance from which those things come is here right now already. Because we have access to that mind substance and those ideas that are created from there and the spiritual laws that move that from the ethers into the outer or into manifestation. We have to be spiritually quickened. And remember, we talked about being spiritually quickened last week. That's to be enlivened. We have to enliven ourselves spiritually, excite ourselves, and it's an excitability. It's like plugging in. We have to plug in, and we have to understand and work in accord with that law. And I know that he keeps repeating it, I keep repeating it, but those are the steps to do it. And it seems so easy. And then when you start trying to practice it, it's like trying to play the piano. Mom's got that keyboard back there, and I was trying to play the song that we're going to sing the week that I speak, and it sounded terrible. And I know I'm hitting kind of almost hitting the right keys. I'm almost there. And it's like, I can't even pick this out yet. I'm gonna have to do it a little bit more, and I'm never going to do it enough in the next 2 weeks to be able to play. But I would like to know the tune so that when we start singing that I've got the right tune. But the fact is Angelo could sit down there and do it right now because he's practiced. Excuse me. And that's what we have to do, is work with that law, work in that law, work for that law until we have it down. Our minds reason and look at the physical and tangible side of things, but we also have that ability to look within, where we can express and demonstrate the truth. Our minds are the gateway between idea and expression, because it's always coming down from divine mind into our minds. The ideas are there, we build that substance, and then we express. But we're often caught up in that physical, tangible side of things. When Adam was created from the dust of the ground, that always sounded really stupid to me. Who creates something from dust? But what that is symbolic of is that living substance, the elemental substance, the very base of everything from which all things are manifested. So sounded like dust. I mean, I don't know what it is in Greek, but what it is basically base material. So that was the best word they had for it, was dust. And the kingdom of the heavens, or the kingdom of God, is within us as that substance, as that dust, as that building block. And I heard Janie earlier say it's like the original Lego set. It's what we have to work with, but it's an unlimited set. It's not just the original, it's all of them. It's even all of those Star Wars ones, the ones they're just really weird.
Make whatever you want.
Exactly. You can make whatever you want to from it. That substance interpenetrates our minds, and then our minds interpenetrate our bodies until every atom of our body has that spiritual substance in it. It's composed of that. But we have to meditate and pray and sit in the silence and work to understand that powerful omnipresent supply that we have access to, so that we can use it rightly. Because we can use it erroneously, and we do often. But we want to be able to take what we want, take what we see in our mind's eye, and create that immediately and with perfection. Or at least better, I want to do it better than I am now. And because we've lived in ignorance and we've separated ourselves from that divine law and divine life, actually, It's often the case that we have to do this work, this practicing for a period of time in order to show a continuity of effort and to be able to produce as we wish to. Because if I went to paint a portrait right now, it certainly wouldn't look like I would think it's looking in my head. But I could probably work on that until I could get some semblance of somebody else could say that it might look a little bit like what I was trying to paint. Right now, I can guarantee you it wouldn't, because I've not used that skill. And it's the same thing, it's a skill, and we have to build that up. He says we don't have to labor in the outer. It's not physical work like learning to play the piano or learning to paint or any of those other things, but we do have to spend time in prayer, meditation, and studying and getting understanding of this law. Because you can't work with it well without understanding it. You can work with it, and we do. We can and do, but we don't do it very well at this point. So what we want to get to is the ability to demonstrate the same way that God demonstrated in the creation of the universe. And when we do that, we open ourselves by recognizing that presence and power of the divine and giving thanks for that spiritual quickening. And again, that quickening is so much more than understanding and application. It is that, but it's also that divine vitality. I said it was like plugging in. It's waking up the entire self to our full consciousness so that we know what we are in the sight of God. Not what we think we are, but knowing what we are in the sight of God. Thoughts of the Creator are ours to appropriate in any way that we want to, but we start by giving thanks. And by giving thanks, we open ourselves to that greater manifestation. It's just an acknowledgement of what is. I have my secretary is somebody who never says thank you. And it's so hard to continue to give to her. I do, and I give her gifts for her birthday and things like that. But it's almost is this not wanted? You wonder when there's not the appreciation there. It's not that God doesn't need anything. That's for us. That appreciation is for us. That thanksgiving is for us to realize and to appreciate what we have. In my case, with her, there's a little bit of ego involved, but there's also a little confusion. Like, well, if you're not appreciative of that, should I stop? Because sometimes people don't want things. I've got a niece that doesn't want gifts. She just doesn't want gifts. So you wonder when somebody's not appreciative if they don't want it. And that's almost the way we are with ourselves. So it's our responsibility to be thankful, to use gratitude. And he says something like, I thank you, Father, that I think your thoughts after you, and my understanding is illumined by spirit. I thank you, Father, that I think your thoughts after you, and my understanding is illumined by spirit. That's just talking to ourselves. Spiritual thoughts are infinite in potentiality, and the thoughts are brought into expression by our words. So when we are grateful, when we do pray, those are all things that resonate with that substance and allow us to create. Every word is a thought and activity. And when we speak, it has a vibration and it goes out and it calls to that substance. It kind of enlivens it. It spiritually quickens it because it's giving it a little shot of zeal, just kind of waking it up. And we demonstrate or manifest by understanding what is true under divine law. And then we carry that concept in our thoughts, in our words, and in our actions. So if we can conceive of any idea, then there's a way to make it apparent, to bring it to fruition. Lack of any kind is not possible in the mind of God. Divine mind doesn't see lack. And since divine mind is all there is, then there is no lack. It's our responsibility to deny what we see as lack and get our minds right. You got to get right with the Lord. Jesus said it this way: seek first the kingdom, and then all things will be added to you. He doesn't say fully realize the kingdom of heaven, and then all things will be added to you. He says, seek the kingdom. So we don't have to be perfect as our Father in heaven is perfect. We don't have to be perfect, but we do have to seek that perfection. We do have to look to the kingdom of heaven. We do have to look to spirit. When we seek and we turn our attention towards that higher consciousness, then we can manifest. Then we can manifest prosperity. But we have to begin to trust the promise and to recognize the opulence that we already have around us. Because if we can't recognize it, we can't get it. When we begin this process in earnest, when we're serious about it, we're going to find that it's easier to forgive. We're going to find that we're more generous. We're going to find that we're less judgmental. And we'll also find that everybody that we come in contact is going to benefit, because these attitudes and these ideas are contagious, just as it is in the reverse. So when we work to get better, when we're more positive, when we're more loving, then that's what comes back to us. And that's what we begin to see. And we eventually will get to a place where that's all we see. Fillmore warns us not to expect miracles to be performed for us, but to expect the law that we've obeyed and practiced to produce results. It's not miraculous. It's an outworking of the law. God within is going to express through us and in our world when we obey the law. So we should fill our minds with images and thoughts of that all-providing power, regardless of any opposing circumstances, regardless of what we see out there. We need to concentrate on what we want. Creative mind lives in and through us as abundance and affluence all the time. And we have to give thanks for what we have and deny that lack has any reality in our thoughts, any reality in our affairs, any reality regardless of what we see. And then we affirm abundance and we focus on spirit and the attributes of spirit and what we want. Because if we're seeing what we don't want, then we're still touching it. It's still in our lives. We got to completely get rid of it. When we do that, when we affirm abundance and when we focus on spirit, then we open a current of thought that manifests prosperity in everything that we do, in all of our affairs, in all of our world, and in the lives of the people around us. That's the beauty of it, is that when we see prosperity, we see it everywhere. So if I see prosperity for me, I'm also seeing it for Janie and Sheila and Linda, and I'm seeing it for everybody. Because I don't see lack. You might be experiencing lack, but what I see for you is prosperity. And those two things can coexist because it's all in our minds. So the important question, that's all of chapter 2, by the way. So the important questions that I saw in there, like one of them is, why are ideas the most important things in life?
That's where it all starts.
That's where it all starts. Mind evolves ideas, and ideas express through us, and we use ideas to create. So they are the most important things. And that's later, he's going to say, when you ask God for something, ask for ideas, because that's all you need. So he talks about the difference between isness and existence. And they kind of sound the same, but they're not. Because mind has two sides. Mind has being and mind has appearance. Mind has the visible and the invisible. And mind is all there is. And so the things that appear have to be expressions of mind. So mind is the only reality, and it appears also as a phenomenon. So that's the difference in existence, which is the phenomenon, and the only reality, which is the isness. And that's one of those concepts that's really kind of hard to wrap your mind around, because when we say that all there is God and God is all there is, but then we have all these creations and things that are also God. So it's in and of, through, around. It's all of the prepositions that you can think of, because it's all, and we just can't fathom that. And he asked at the end of the chapter, should we deny the existence of material things? Should we deny that material things are exist or not? And if we do, can we do it successfully?
Yes, we can.
But
No can.
the fact that we have the ability to conceive of an ideal condition in the world gives the possibility of its expression. So what you can conceive can be created.
And that you'd be able to deny what's not.
We can't not express. We have to express. Being has to express. That is the job, expression. The reason, the fact that we can think shows our ability to express. That's how we express ourselves. And we're always thinking. So we can deny things of the outer world have existence, but as long as we're in contact with them, we're recognizing them. So should we deny the existence of material things or things that we don't want? Absolutely. But if, as we said earlier, if you still have contact with them, they're still there. You're still you're still recognizing them. When he says, when you affirm being and deny the expression of being, you're a house divided. And that's why we have to withdraw from relating to and seeing anything as less than good. And that is one of the hardest things to do for me, thinking about looking at everything and calling it good. Had a car wreck, it's all good. Tornado destroyed a bunch of houses, it's all good. That's a hard thing to do. Small child who's leukemia, it's all good. It's a very hard thing to do. But when we can get above that, above our concepts of what's right, wrong, what's good, what's bad, and realize that all of these things are happening, but there is an overall goodness. There is good. It's really hard to do that. And so y'all start practicing.
There's some goodness in it somewhere. It's kind of helps me to think that there has to be some goodness.
And yes, I agree with you, but you're still limiting it. Yeah,
And judging it. And I think that the Buddhists have a really good take on it. It's just, it is.
Mhm.
It is. And then if you try to leave those labels off of it, and it is, and that is how it is right now. It is.
Oh,
The America, or a lot of the Western culture, wants to say it is good, it is bad, it is horrible, it is despicable. It just is.
How do you empathize with someone who's going through a struggling time if you're trying not to see that they're having a struggle?
I think,
I mean, sitting there and saying, oh, that's wonderful that this happened and that's good, and trying to get them to see something good when they're not seeing that.
I don't think that you should ever tell somebody
I
that,
don't
that,
either,
yeah,
but
yeah.
how do you yourself empathize with someone who's struggling if you refuse to allow yourself to see the struggle?
I think the best thing I've ever seen as far as that goes is that Brene Brown clip that I show when I do the prayer chaplain training. Those of you that haven't been in prayer chaplain training, it's basically, she's saying that when people are hurting, all they need is just someone there, just compassion, just almost a presence. And it's actually a pretty funny clip. And she said, never does compassion start with, well, at least you've got another child. Well, at least, that's never compassionate. And I think the compassion, and in that video, the bear, who is compassionate, never says anything. He just kind of stands there and is with that person. And she says a couple of times, something like, that must be hard. Or I'm sure that's difficult for you. Or just anything that lets that person know that you hear them, that you understand, that you empathize, but never either, agreeing with, oh God, your life is a real terrible dumpster fire. I don't think that's compassion either. Pardon me, believing it, agreeing with somebody to the point of saying, yeah, you've got the worst life situation I've ever seen, but just sitting with them and saying, I can see this is hard for you. Not judging them, not judging the situation, but saying, I can see you're having a hard time. I can see you're hurting. I can see this is uncomfortable, just whatever that is. I think that's more compassionate than getting down in the dirt with somebody.
But do you really see how it is with them if you're trying to avoid that material struggle? If that's what I'm saying, like you were driving,
Mhm.
you have positive, you can't avoid this thing happening over here. But so if somebody's having an issue, if they're having a problem, how can you say, I can see that's hard for you? If you're not supposed to allow yourself to see the hardness,
If
the
you had,
difficulty.
if you had the faith that he talks about, if you could see the changelessness of the individual, if you could see the power of the substance, if you knew the eternity, the eternalness of the being, I think it's a sequence, but you have to see it inside. If I can see this first myself, maybe I can see you as just a ray of light when it's, I look upon catastrophe, but no, it's not true. Well, there's a greater truth behind it.
Yes, and what we're doing here is theory, we're talking theory now, so you wouldn't use this when somebody is suffering.
There's nothing
Well,
you can
I
do
mean,
anyway.
what if somebody, that's just an example.
Why do you have to react appropriately? Why do you have to change it? Why can't it just be as it is right now? You gotta feel better about it, or, it's just the allness, the eachness, the potential, the eternal, it's the magnificence of the experience. And maybe they're not aware of it, but I think it's a sequence. If I can do it right here, I think I can see it, right?
I think that's the secret right there, is we study it here, we try to realize it. But when we're dealing with other people, we don't try to put it on me one way or the other. I think PJ has the idea, this is what's going on right here, now, this is. But, I'm not gonna try to tell you something that's in this book right now. But we hold it in our mind to know that somehow it's gonna work out. It's gonna be okay. So when we can know that, then we have a different hold on it for when we're listening to them. But then you have to use common sense.
I
If
talked
you're
to
not careful,
someone,
you're gonna create what they say don't create with, because it demolishes your faith. It's, he's talked about the faith that you had to. You gotta stay with it, you gotta be with it. I can't remember how it was said, you get discouraged, it'll take you out of the flow.
yeah, I see what you're saying, but just talking about with other people is just an example. I mean, I would never do that with somebody, but
Even if you did.
let's just
I
say.
always like to say, what do you think you did to deserve that?
She said, what do you think you did to deserve that? What karma are you working out? What were you saying? You said you'd never say that with a,
I get what is being said here on a plane that's much higher, like God's ways are not our ways, and it's talks about our thoughts and all of that, and I get the whole thing, like, as a man thinketh there, so he is, and that kind of thing. But it's like, you can't just ignore that there are issues and there are problems and think, oh, well, that's good. Cause in that case, if everything's good, why step out to help anyone? Why see, oh, they're struggling, why step out to help anybody? Why step out to help yourself with applying for a new job, if it's gonna occur? Because you think good about it, because you think positive about it. I mean, I understand what you're saying, it's just I'm having
You're just reiterating
those
your
thoughts are
position.
coming through.
You're just reiterating your position, is what you're doing. It's doubting. It can't be this way because it's this way. If one this way, then maybe it could be this way.
And if we're doing it right, we're not seeing it because it's not happening. I mean,
yes, ultimately, but what were you gonna say, Annie?
Well, the first thing I would say is that, some of what you're talking about, like when it's so obvious that things are not right in the material world, how can you call it all good? And I don't, and I think that, so I absolutely understand that struggle. And I think that part of what I'm trying to make sense of this for me is that I wanna see an ideal it's not that I am ignoring that or even ignoring my judgment about things, but I will be more in tune with divine thought if I can see another reality. Now, separate from all that, because it's almost like for me, you're talking about a couple different things. And when I think about sitting with a person who is suffering, I don't feel like kind of just reflecting what they're saying. I don't, the reflection of, it seems like you're going through a really hard time right now. That just to me is a compassion, and that it's not, part of what I got from this chapter is not so much that, well, eventually I'm going to get some money in my bank account anyway, so I don't need to worry about it, but that there may be a gift that I bring to the world. My focus isn't on what's going to end up in my bank account, but if I will be in tune with the spiritual gifts I have, that the rest will follow, and and so if you are a person, and like, I feel like when I was reading this is like, okay, I think one of my spiritual gifts is to give, is to be able to hear people's feelings and help them be seen in those feelings. I don't think that saying gosh, it seems like you're really struggling right now, or gosh, it seems like you're really in pain right now, is a departure from the divine, or even making a judgment so much as it's just a reflection. And I can hold in my mind a vision for them that this is not always going to be how they feel, that there are opportunities for them to be in a different way than they're being. And I can just hold that just hold it without,
Tell it,
you
you
know,
don't have to tell them.
and as a matter of fact, it would almost be unkind in some ways, to tell them what I'm holding for them, because it's almost like, well, if you would just have your spiritual shit together, then this wouldn't be happening. And I certainly can't say that to somebody, because I so don't have my spiritual shit together. And I read this, I'm like, I am an ignoramus, because I can't make sense of all this. But I think compassion is a spiritual gift, whether it is part of your income stream or not. That's just a spiritual gift. That is just recognizing that we are in a human family, and we live in this material plane, and that we are going to be sad and grief stricken and angry and frustrated and joyous and all of those things. And that's not, it doesn't really, I'm trying to help it make sense to me that that's not really affirming or keeping them in that condition. It's just recognizing what they are sharing. I don't know.
No, that's,
On and on.
that's exactly.
Beautiful.
exactly
That
right.
is beautiful. And just to expand on that a little bit, by when you see the shit show or the dumpster fire, it's happening. But if you can, in the fire, pick out some beautiful flames, find something positive, and not focus on the burning debris,
Tires.
every. Mhm.
Tires.
Yeah, the tires that are smoking, but maybe just that blue color that's kind of irritating. If you can just get your mind to a place where, yeah, this is not ideal, but just find a thread that you can pull on that is positive, that is affirming something that is maybe coming out of that, or the potential that might be there. If you can, because what we want to see is the positive. And if you are commiserating and focused on, I mean, like, even if you go political, I mean, it's there, but there is something good. There is something good in everyone, in everything, in every situation. And I think what is asked of us spiritually is to give our focus, give our mind to that good, and allow that debris to just kind of slough away.
Yeah, to settle, because as long as we're stirring up the water, it's going to keep it muddy. But all of that's going to settle at the bottom, and then we're going to have a clear place to drink. But
Just trying to say is if you can feel in yourself that some good's gonna come out of this, if you learn that, about learning all of this, you don't say that to the people. But it helps you to have more compassion for them, and have to be able to be with them in their misery.
I understand.
and I think the other piece that I have a problem with, that maybe you were saying, is, well, how can we even see it if it's not really there? If everything's all good, how can we even see that? And again, it's that judgment. But I believe that when we perfect this, when we become concert pianists, that we will no longer see that. Because the things that we judge now as good or bad, the judgment won't be there. And even those things that we think are, even the terrible tornado, will be so beyond all of that that won't even be a thing in our lives. And I do believe that. I'm not there yet. I'm almost there, maybe tomorrow. But I do believe that we will no longer see that. We won't see people hurting because all we will see is the Christ. And the Christ doesn't hurt. So-
Don't change the world, change the way you see the world.
Yeah,
But
That's
that's
your only
fear.
hope.
yeah,
Otherwise, you'd be trapped in suffering. There wasn't, the freedom is a menace. And to do what he's talking about, you're gonna have to be quick and then you're gonna have to be pretty buoyant and, find a way to be above it.
absolutely.
He doesn't really create an offensive man or anybody. He doesn't, you can come down to my level if I'm hurting. It doesn't benefit me, it doesn't add anything to this, Oh, it was company, or maybe I think more highly of your ego, but still love. There's nothing there, nothing you're gonna take with you. Because this is Bible, you get trapped here. And you can't get joyful because of the war, because of the,
Because of the
there's a reason we
election,
have to
yeah.
find a way to get above this.
You're right.
That's critical.
And the way we do that is through our I am. Absolute, whatever you want to call it, but, and he says, the next question is what is the I am identity and how does it differ from divine mind? So we talk about the Christ consciousness and we talk about divine mind and what's the difference in that? And he says, we wonder why we don't understand more truth than we do, or why it's necessary to understand it at all. If God is all wise and all powerful and everything's good and he's all present. But we have to understand that. We have to have the understanding of this wonderful I amness, this wonderful God is love, God is all good. And he says that we are the focal point of God consciousness. And we express God. But we have to understand the process that brings about that expression. So, and that process that he's talking about is following that divine law, following the divine laws that we have. He says, infinite mind is here with all its ideas as a resource for us. And what we become, what we are, what we see, what we know, what we understand is the result of our efforts to accumulate in our consciousness all of those attributes of infinite mind. And it's our Christ consciousness that allows us to grab hold of those. So our job is to align with that divine mind, with our little smaller minds, with our little boat. We're in our little boat here, sailing on this sea of infinite mind. And we can't get away from it. And it is the boat and it is us. But we feel like we've got this little separate thing. And so when we bring all of those ideas into our boat with us, then we've got it. Does that make a little bit of sense?
Like I said, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I know, and it gets frustrating because then you get off into, but what about, but why is there hunger? Why do bad things happen
Why
to
is
good
the
people?
poor always-
Yeah, exactly. The poor will always be with you, and they will. And then the last thing he says is, since we don't actually express God to give us bread, what should we expect instead of material things? That's right. We want ideas. We've got them. We want to utilize those ideas. That mind substance, not money, but ideas, not cars and houses and furs and anything else that's those outward symbols of wealth, but those ideas. And we are wealthy in ideas. And when we use them rightly, then we set spiritual force in motion and things begin to come to us and to begin to manifest through that application of the law. And that was chapter 2. So next week we'll get to chapter 3. So that just leaves me to, unless anybody's got any other. All right. So that just leaves me with a blessing for you all from Romans 12:2 tonight. Paul says, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is what it is that is good and acceptable and perfect, which is the will of God. And that's what we want, because God's will is all good. Thank you and good night. I love you all.